CBS Sports HQ, we're streaming. Chris Hassel joined by Pete Prisco. We've got your brand new power rankings.
They're out.
They are. No change at the very top, but very impressive win by Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on the road against the Chargers. They remain your number one.
They are who many people didn't think they were this year, which is the same offense they've always been.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in just a minute as we look at Pete Prisco's brand new power rankings. You can see them all at cbssports.com as well. Chiefs and Eagles remain 1-2 respectively. Titans into the top 5 for the first time this season after that 0-2 start. Cowboys jumping the Vikings after they clobbered Minnesota. The Vikings down 4 spots to number 7. Patriots now knocking on the door of the top 10. They are at 11, winning for a 5th time in 6 games. That defense has been incredible. Falcons jump ahead of the Bucs. What? Yes, we'll talk about that with Pete Prisco as well, despite Tampa leading that division. Saints up 5 spots, and the Lions are up 6 spots. And a bunch of disappointments here in the 20s, like the Packers down 3 spots, the Rams all the way down at number 29. Texans remain in the basement. All right, we're going to break this down with Pete Prisco, and we're also going to bring in Bryant McFadden, like always. B-Mac, thank you for joining the program. Let's start with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, fellas, because he has somehow, in some ways, been more productive and more explosive without Tyreek Hill this season.
It's amazing to watch, and remember all the talk about it's going to be a different offense. They're not going to have explosive plays. He's on pace to have more 20-plus passing plays and more passing plays over 40 yards. And that's a tribute to Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback, and it's a tribute to Andy Reid as an offensive mind and Eric Bieniemy, the play caller. They are outstanding at what they do. It doesn't matter who's on the field. You know, there were people, we had guys on Sunday who were saying, oh, Travis Kelce will get taken away because he doesn't have his other options on the field. No, he just goes to him more and more and more. That's the greatness of Patrick Mahomes, and this offense is unstoppable. They've already locked up the AFC West. It looks like they're heading to a showdown in the playoffs with the Buffalo Bills.
D-Mac?
Yeah, you talk about the Chiefs being the clear-cut best team in the National Football League. I agree with that, but it's safe to say Pat Mahomes is the clear-cut favorite to win the MVP based on what he's done. Everything that Pete mentioned, I agree with. When you look at the relationship between the play callers and Pat Mahomes, that has really been a big part in their execution and how consistent they've been. And one thing I know about great players, especially great players that play the quarterback position, they make their pass catchers look better than what they actually are. Outside of Travis Kelce, you can't necessarily name the other pass catchers that were big-time contributors in that ball game against the Chiefs, but they showed up and they showed out because Pat Mahomes elevated their ball game. So right now, the way he's playing, I mean, this is going to be a very, very entertaining year as we look at the month of December for the Kansas City Chiefs and trying to lock up everything they would like to lock up within the division and the AFC. And I really like their chances knowing that Pat Mahomes is playing the way he's been playing.
You know, Chris, one of the most telling stats for a quarterback, at least in my mind, is yards per attempt. That's how you can tell if they're driving the ball down the field. His yards per attempt is up 0.4 from 7.8 to 8.2 without Tyreek Hill. I mean, that's incredible. If you would have told me that before the season, I would have said there's no way that's going to happen. He's also become a better quarterback. He's much more mature. He stands in the pocket. He used to get impatient, and that was the book on him. Play cover, play off, make him get impatient. That's no longer the book on him anymore because he's emerged as a better quarterback now than when he put up those gaudy numbers early in his career.
He's 14-0 on the road in the division in his career. Amazing stuff from Patrick Mahomes, who could be on his way to winning the MVP award. Nobody fell further in Pete Prisco's power rankings than the Minnesota Vikings. I know you want to have some fun with B-Mac and his cuz, Patrick Peterson, but I mean, how can you trust this team now after what we saw from them at home? It was going to be a raucous environment. It was supposed to be the biggest home game for Minnesota regular season in decades, and they do that. They fall flat.
Are we allowed to use the F word on the air?
Which one?
Fraud.
Oh,
whoa, B-Mac! Fraud! Think about it. They have a negative point differential. Negative. That should never be the case. They're the only team since, the 87 Chargers to have a negative point differential and be 8-2. We don't know anything about this team. We have no idea. They beat 3 teams with backup quarterbacks in this little run to 8-2. I don't know how good they are. Their lines were dominated from start to finish the other day. Just pushed around, both of them. And Christian Darrisaw got hurt, and he's a great player at left tackle. He's going to be really star-studded left tackle, and he went down. But I'm telling you, they got pushed around in every facet of the game. We have no idea how good this team is. And by the way, when it started going bad, usually your quarterback can pull you out from underneath it. Not old Kirk, boy. He didn't do anything in that game. It was bad across the board.
That's the most concerning thing for me in watching that Cowboys-Vikings game was how dominant the Cowboys were in the trenches on both sides of the football and how bad the Vikings were. You talked about it. Yes, they got dominated from start to finish. And it seemed like everything kind of went off the rails for the Minnesota Vikings. Not necessarily saying that sack fumble in the first offensive drive that Michael Parsons calls, but the second offensive possession, remember they drove the length of the football field. TJ Hawkinson had 2 opportunities to come down with a big-time touchdown. He dropped them. They had to set up a field goal, and then after that, the wheels fell off the truck. They got to find a way to get better on the offensive line because the book is out right now. That bad film they put out, you better believe every opposing team they're going against, they will see the rest of the way. We'll try to repeat and do the same thing the Cowboys did on both sides of the football. We know what they have at the skill positions, right? We know they got an outstanding wide receiver, guy in the running back in Dalvin Cook that can be a big-time contributor. But it means nothing if they can't protect running the football or protect in regards to throwing the football. So let's see exactly what they have in store against another pretty good defense in the New England Patriots, because one thing I know about good teams, they have deep playoff aspirations. They don't put out 2 bad performances back to back. They usually bounce back. So let's see if the Vikings can bounce back.
Cousins have that glazed look.
It was like 3 plays. Well, first off, he should have got rid of the ball in the play where he got the strip sack. The guy Darrisaw actually blocked Parsons for a second, his initial move, and then he held the ball too long, and then it went like that. I mean, it's bad to watch because you can see it happening. One other thing about the Vikings, all that off coverage that they play, the middle of the field's always open. BMAC, I know you probably have some inside information on this, but they have to play a little tighter on that side of the ball.
They got to mix it up. And I think one thing you got to understand about the National Football League, you can't play every offense the same. You can't, because if you do, you're not going to be successful. The way you played Buffalo, you cannot play the Dallas Cowboys the same way. The way you play the Green Bay Packers, you can't play the Detroit Lions the same way. You got to be able to switch it up. That's something that we oftentimes did a lot in Pittsburgh. Whatever we showed you against the Cleveland Browns, you probably wouldn't see against the Cincinnati Bengals because we always kept you guessing. I think they're starting to become a little too predictable on the defensive side, and they have relied on the outstanding pass rush from Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. But what happens when those guys are not getting home and quarterbacks actually have time to be able to go through the progressions? They will find the open man, especially when you look at some of the vanilla zones they play in the back end.
This sounds like inside information, man, doesn't it?
You think he's giving it up?
No, it's no inside information,
This sounds
Pete.
like
I'm watching the game the same way you're watching the game. What are you talking about? Stop trying to stir the pot. There's nothing in the pot to be stirred.
We just stirred it.
Looking forward to that next podcast, All Things Covered, with Atkins' cousin, Patrick Peterson. All right, let's move on to the big question that I think people reading your article, looking at your power rankings are going to have is, how in the world do you have the Falcons ahead of the Bucs? The Bucs are atop the division. They beat the Falcons.
Yeah, and they'll be atop. It was one last thing for the Falcons because I think they're going to disappear off the face of the earth. And so they won last week. I put them there.
Are you playing games with
I put them there because the Bucs are going to be the Bucs are going to be one of the most dangerous teams in the league down the stretch.
So what are you doing putting them at 17?
Because I don't think they're the same team right now, and so I just put them there, and that's why. I think the Falcons won last week. The Bucs didn't play.
You did not answer the question.
The Falcons won last week. The Bucs didn't play.
So the Buccaneers got penalized for having a bye. But you just stated you believe they're going to have a real successful rest of the way. Yeah,
I do.
Chris, I'm right there with you. Something's fishy with
Shady
this
stuff from Pete.
part of his ranking. Something is fishy. Pete, personally, for me, Pete, I would love to see the Commanders above the Falcons and the Buccaneers. I understand, yes, they played against the Houston Texans, but they blew them out. But if you look at what the Commanders have been doing over the last 3 weeks, even though they lost to the Minnesota Vikings, they actually had that game in their hands. And then winning a huge game against Philly, and then of course against Houston last week. Man, they're starting to get healthy. They hopefully may get Chase Young back into that lineup. Taylor Heineke is playing real good football. I love what they got when you look at Brian Robertson and Antonio Gibson. Curtis Samuel is starting to show up. I think the Commanders is a team we need to start paying a little more attention to, because as they continue to get healthy, especially on the defensive side, the way they're playing football offensively with the energy and the chemistry they establish it, this might be a team that could sneak into that playoff conversation before everything is all said and done.
Well, they haven't exactly beat a murderer's row of teams either. I mean, they did beat the Eagles on the road, but the rest of those teams they beat in this little run that aren't very good, they have a playoff game this week. They play the Falcons this week. It's a pseudo playoff game for those two teams. So we'll see. But I'm with you, B-Mac. I think when you look at their defense, they're really starting to play well on that side of the ball. Still have some issues on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively they're starting to play much better.
And we'll see. Commanders right now on the outside looking in, but now the Seahawks have been tied by the 49ers atop that division. So the Seahawks right now in a wild card position. Maybe the Commanders can take over Seattle's spot in the postseason. All right, B-Mac, we're going to be back with you in just a little bit as we continue to look at Pete Prisco's power rankings here and a bunch of teams that Pete is getting ready to bury.
Oh, I see many going to grave candidates.
A lot of 7-loss teams that we thought could be playoff teams. Packers, Cardinals, maybe even the Raiders, the Broncos. Who's Pete going to bury? We'll find out next. All right, we paid an intern. Actually, we didn't pay him. We just told our intern to go grab the best quotes from Pete Prisco's Power Rankings article. Pete, I want to ask you about the Zach Wilson one. Zach Wilson should head to the bench. Why is should in like a parentheses, a bracket?
I don't know.
Well, you wrote it that way, didn't you?
I don't know. Did I?
What does that mean? Zach Wilson should head to the bench.
Should he?
Well, should he?
Yes. And here's why.
Yes.
Not for the comment after the game, because that's ridiculous. But for the way he played. If he threw for 160 yards, I'd say okay, all right. Even 180, you'd keep him in there. But he was so bad, you take him out of there.
Jets at number 14 in Pete's power rankings, by the way. Pete Prisco, Bryant McFadden, Chris Hassel with you. Let's look at the Lions and Dan Campbell, who you said is doing a really good job. I mean, he looked like he was going to be out of a job by the end of this season, the way this season started. But boy, they've really picked it up. 3 straight wins for the first time in 5 years. They're the biggest jumpers this week, up 6 spots to number 20.
I'm going to give Rick Spielman, who works with us, a lot of credit because he said that about a month ago. He said they're going to get going and get on a little bit of a run, and he was right. Now, his brother is the president of the Detroit Lions, so he's like B-Mac with the Vikings. They don't see any of the bad. They only see is the good. So I get it. But look, they've done a nice job. They've turned things around. One thing that they've definitely done is they've improved on defense. They were historically bad on defense, and they've improved on that side of the ball. But it's Thanksgiving, and you know who's coming on Thanksgiving on the fast track that he just lit up the Browns on? Here comes Josh Allen. Good luck with that one. But it was a nice little run. They won't beat the Lions.
You're not giving them a chance against the Bills?
They won't beat the Bills on Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, man, anything can happen.
Anything can happen, including eating turkey or a turducken or whatever they used to do for Thanksgiving.
One thing I can say about this Bills and Lions game, the Bills defense hasn't been as dominant as we thought they would be, especially over the last few weeks. So there is a window of opportunity for Jared Goff. And offensively, the way they're running the football, the balance they have been able to display, they could make things a little interesting in that ball game. But I agree with you. I think in totality, the Bills will win that ball game. But I think the Lions have enough, especially with seeing some of the improved strides on the defensive side, to make this thing a little more dicey than what many people expect. But what they've done over the last 3 weeks, one thing I like about the Lions, even when they were losing ball games, they never gave up. They're a team that will fight to the end. No matter what the scoreboard is saying, they fight for 4 quarters. And now that fight has transferred into wins. And because of that, the energy is now there within that organization as well, because they know good and well they have no playoff hopes. What they're trying to do is play spoiler. Misery loves company, so they're trying to add a little misery to a few teams that they have left on their schedule. And don't be surprised if they make things, like I said, real interesting in this Bills matchup this week.
Is he B-Mac's on with us later on for the picks, I think, because Brady's not in this week? He's getting a little
Yes, I
ahead.
am.
He's tipping his hand already on the picks.
Yeah, Brady food poisoning. He ate the raw turkey before they put it into the oven on Thursday.
No, he did not.
Did Brady order that surf and turf that Pete loves?
Yeah, you love my. Hey, my surf and turf was 2-0 last night. 2-0.
Lions, by the way, 4-6, 2 games out of the last playoff spot. So still, as B-Mac said, a long way to go if we're talking playoffs for this Detroit team. You buried the Packers a few weeks ago. Then you dug up the grave last week after the come-from-behind win. The grave's still dug. Are you going to kick them back in there?
Oh, they're in. They're
back in. Okay.
They're lifeless. They're lifeless on offense. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, what the hell is he doing? I know he has no receivers. We know that. The receivers are limited. But he had guys open last week, and he missed them. He missed them time and time again. And look, the Titans are a tough physical team. I get it. They can be dominant at the line of scrimmage. But a lot of times he had time to throw the football, and he just missed guys. He does not look comfortable at all. And defensively, they let Ryan Tannehill look like the greatest quarterback in the world. I'm concerned about the Packers' defense now. They have a ton of injuries, on that side of the ball. So I think they're done. I think they're finished, and the Eagles will finish them off this week.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No question. They're done. It seems like there's a disconnect with Aaron Rodgers and his pass catchers. And last week in that ball game against the Tennessee Titans, he had some Zach Wilson-like throws. You talked about the wide receivers being open, and he just blatantly missed those guys. I've never seen Aaron Rodgers look like that in a professional ball game, especially since he's earned and gained the experience. So me personally, yes, they're done. Defensively, they were already trending in the wrong direction, but I have no hope in anything they can do in regards to some of the injuries they're dealing with. Right now, they're just fighting for the morale of the team. Playoffs are done, and they're not careful, man. They could find themselves, when it's all said and done, at the bottom of the NFC North, which would be something that would surprise all of us.
And right now they're 4-7. The Bears, the only team below them in the division, at 3-8. You are also going to bury another team today, another team that had high aspirations, a team that won it all last season, Sean McVay and the LA Rams. No team with fewer wins in the NFC than this team.
Yeah, where's my shovel? Did I have my shovel? Bring my shovel over
can
here.
borrow
I'm going to start digging.
Toss that shovel.
I'm going to dig the hole and start throwing the Rams in because they're done. They're finished. Look, fairness to them, they sold their soul and they got a Super Bowl ring. It worked. It worked for you. Everything you did last year worked for you. But this team that you put on the field right now is awful in every way, shape, or form. The quarterback has a concussion. I wouldn't let him play again until he's completely cleared. Not one shred of a symptom. 2 weeks in a row, that's dangerous, that's concerning. Cooper Kupp should never play it down the rest of the year. Shut him down. It's going to be 6 weeks anyway, shut him down. And their offensive line, they've had 9 different offensive line groups start for them. You know how many of those groups have played well? None. They're terrible on the offensive line. This team stinks with a capital S, but they sold their soul last year, and it worked at least to get the Super Bowl.
Hey, Pete, I think it's safe to say this team, the Rams, they were dead weeks ago, but unfortunately, the hole wasn't dug yet. They were just waiting for the hole to be provided so they can fall in it because they have nothing. They have no juice. And the difficult part for Rams fans is that this season is a wash. They're going down the drain. But they're going to have a high first rounder. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pete. That first rounder goes to someone else this year, right?
Yes, to Detroit. I mean, they don't have any picks. They have no picks. How are you coming out from underneath this?
I don't even know. Do they have a second rounder this year? Because it's safe to say they're going to have a high pick in the first 3 rounds for sure. But I don't even know if they own those picks. I think those picks, clearly the first rounder goes to Detroit. We have to look that up. But
it's worth it, though. It was worth it. Let's be real.
Yeah,
you get one Super Bowl, it's worth it.
Sure.
But now you just got to deal with the misery, and they're bad. And not only that, the defense is starting to play bad football. And you know where they have to go this week? Kansas City. Good luck with that one.
Worst start for a defending champion since the Broncos in '99. That made sense at least. John Elway retired. Right. Who was playing quarterback for the Broncos the year after that?
God, who was that?
I don't even know.
Remember
They were
off
so
the top
bad.
of my head.
B-Mac, thank you so much. Pete Prisco's Power Rankings here, Bryant McFadden, you got the new All Things Covered podcast with your cousin. Is it just going to be a funeral for you guys this week? What is it?
It won't be a funeral, more like a wake, not the necessarily the funeral, but more like
viewing.
a wake.
Get
Yes,
to
the
the
viewing.
inside information on how much off coverage they play and
you
how soft they are on that side of the ball and how they
I'm
never
not being
change it
messy
up.
like you are, Pete.
Yeah, I'm messy. I admit it.
Thanks, fellas.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.